we believe we've got a better product and a better brand at Rich Energy than Red Bull. Hang on a minute, I'm the manager. There's a duty of care to the fighter. He has to have his manager in the dressing room. And they escorted me from the premises. We've won, or Rich Energy teams have won British Superbikes. We've won British touring cars. We've won the Ducati Championship. We've won in the TT. And we are going to be coming back to Formula One. But I think primarily, as the show's about boxing, we want to get ever more involved in boxing.
Now, I'm going to be bringing sharply on my next guest now, who is just an amazing character. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with this guy. When I've told a few people about him, people have said certain things, and I'm going to treat him I see him as a great guy. So I want to hear everything about him. Mr. Will Storey, welcome to the show. Will, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend? Are you well?
Very well indeed. How are you?
I'm really well. Better for seeing you, mate. Really, really am. You're such an interesting character, Will. And I have no idea how this is going to go. Because I'll be honest, generally, you're in a completely different lane than me. No pun intended. But you also aren't with some of the boxing stuff. So this is really interesting to me. For the people out there, tell us a little bit about you, Will.
Well, you asked the questions. What do you want to know?
So you're a founder, of course, of Rich Energy, starting with.
Yeah.
So tell us about Rich Energy, which is a good timing with the can.
Yeah, it's very good timing. So Rich Energy, there you go, is a premium British competitor to Red Bull, which I set up in 2015. Basically it grew very quickly. It's a great product, and we got a Formula One team, IndyCar team, Superbike teams, etc. We work with a lot of boxers, so I'm a huge lifelong fan of boxing. So, and obviously that's why we're primarily discussing tonight. But we had a lot of world champion boxer ambassadors, and and Rich Energy was obviously boxing was a great platform, among others, including motorsport. And it's a product that grew very quickly. I've had a lot of legal problems with Red Bull. They've taken me to court on multiple occasions. We've had a lot of people try and do down the brand, etc. But we've worked really hard, and we've kept control of it. And great product. It's designed as a premium British competitor to Red Bull, essentially.
Fantastic. So you've been involved in boxing, though, quite extensively. This isn't new to you. You've been involved in boxing quite a lot. So tell us about the people you've represented and what your association is with boxing.
So I've always been a fan. Literally, I love sport, but I've always been a huge boxing fan. I think the first fights I watched as a kid, probably like most people my age, early 40s, was sort of obviously Mike Tyson, and obviously the Eubank-Ben fights, Eubank-Collins, or Ben Collins as well. And obviously got into it that way. Went to the York Hall a lot, went to a lot of big fights. So, no, I've always been a boxing fan. Watch boxing since a young age, and it is an amazing sport. I mean, it's an incredible sport that I think is unique. I think the people involved are unique. Matches people remember forever. I mean, you look at sort of Hearns Hagler as one example. You look at the Tyson fights. I mean, one of my favourite fights would probably be Lennox Lewis v Klitschko. That was Lennox Lewis's last ever fight. He was an unbelievable heavyweight, and Klitschko, he was the sort of the young lion coming up. He was fantastic, and if you watch that fight, I think it went 5 rounds, and Lennox Lewis had to dig really deep. I think Klitschko took it at 2 weeks' notice. Lewis was probably a stone overweight and probably taking it lightly, but Klitschko was fantastic. But Lewis dug deep, and I think that was an incredible fight.
So I'd like to pick your brains a little bit here, and it's probably a question you weren't really expecting, but I think that's the best way you get to know someone. So how do you find it so easy, not just in business, but in business, but how do you find it so easy to finalize deals, whether that be sponsorship deals, whether that be F1, whether that be, kind of representing a boxer? How do you find it so easy to close deals?
I mean, I think, listen, at the end of the day, it's just about passion for what you do, isn't it? If you believe in what you're doing, whether it's a product, whether it's a boxer, whether it's a brand, whether it's a service, whatever. I mean, you've got to believe in what you're doing. And, clearly, are you better than the competition? Are they better than the competition? I mean, boxing is a unique sport. Boxers are, effectively self-employed entertainment business. Ticket sales is a big, big thing. Most promoters are always looking after the fighters that can sell, or looking out for the fighters that can sell the most tickets. But, I mean, I think obviously exciting fighting styles is a big thing. Mayweather was a great exception. I mean, he was, not massive a puncher. He was a technician and fantastic, proponent of the sweet science. So, people admired his skills, but generally speaking, the bigger box office fighters are those who, the fighters that are box office tend to be those who are come forward fighters, big punchers. I mean, obviously, the likes of Golovkin, Tyson. I think Canelo's fantastic because he'll fight anyone. He's got a brilliantly entertaining style. Then there are people like Andre Ward who are sensationally gifted, but perhaps not so exciting to watch. But they're still, people will admire their tactics. And then there's likes of Amir Khan. I mean, he's obviously very exciting, fast hands, but I don't think it'd be too unkind to say he's got a glass jaw. So you're sort of almost thinking, well, how's it going to finish? When's it going to finish? I mean, I think most boxing fans would have backed Kell Brook to stop Khan. I mean, you look at these things. So I think to go back to the original question, closing the deal, I think it's just a case of believing in what you're doing. Whatever you do, there is no point in doing something you don't love doing. Life's too short for that. I think if you're going to work in boxing or football or energy drinks or whatever it is you do, you've got to love it. And that passion probably comes through. I think you've got to ask for the business. I mean, at the end of the day, business people have to be sold to. The world goes round with deals. So, I guess it's just, you ask for the business. And if they say no, you take it on the chin, or you probably ask them again, take it on the chin and move on. I think if you ask me that, I mean, tenacity, passion, hard work, it's a numbers game as well. I mean, listen, you can be phenomenal, but if you speak to 100 people, you do 10 times more deals than if you speak to 10 people. So I think it's that sort of discipline, hard work, and I think positive attitude. And that counts in anything, whether it's sport, business, life. A can-do attitude. You're looking for solutions, not problems. And I think most people who are successful have a positive attitude. And I think it's a bit harsh, but you probably want to avoid negative people as well. You just don't need them around you, and you want to surround yourself with go-getters and people with a can-do attitude.
Cool. So this is a question not necessarily from me. It's just more of a comment that someone said to me, because I know more about Trinidad and Tobago than I do F1. I have not got a clue. I have got absolutely no clue whatsoever. From what I got told, and I'm saying what I got told because I'm sure this happens a lot when it comes to hearsay, is that you sponsored a team, Haas, I believe, and then it fell through. I'm hearing a few different things on some of course, I do my research saying that few choice words about you. So what actually happened?
Well, that's a good one, isn't it? I mean, boxing to Formula One. So Formula One is a very, very different sport to boxing. The similarities are it's exciting. I actually think boxing is a better sport, to be quite honest. But as a platform for an energy drink, there's a lot of similarities. It's about high performance. We like motorsport. Obviously, if you've got an energy drink brand, you want to have a platform that, is the right platform for you, that, the right number of people. Formula One, I think, has got 1 billion fans around the world.
Wow.
So, it's a great platform. Obviously, the market leader in energy drinks is Red Bull. So obviously, they're very famous as having put, billions of pounds into Formula One, and it's the sort of top of their marketing tree. So clearly, listen, we believe we've got a better product and a better brand at Rich Energy than Red Bull. And as such, clearly having a Formula One team was brilliant. We got a team in 2019, black and gold. We named it Rich Energy Haas. And it was very, very successful for the brand. We signed supermarket deals around Europe. We signed all the major casino chains and bar chains. And there was a lot of politics. We were we were ruffling feathers. You know, that they didn't like some sort of new company come from nowhere. Slightly unconventional. There was a lot of politics. Red Bull put us under a lot of pressure. We were growing very, very quickly as a business. We were seen as a genuine alternative to Red Bull, which would be, make us fairly unique in the business. Most other energy drinks that have done well have carved out another segment, be that Monster, which is obviously a different size can, different product. Recently, you've had Prime. These are all finding segments, whether it's for young kids or whether it's for sort of skate parks. As a premium alternative to Red Bull, Rich Energy was deemed the most credible threat. So, we came up against the big boys. And I also had some investors who got very greedy and wanted to take control of the business. So there was lots of different things going on. But ultimately, since then, we've won, or Rich Energy teams have won British Superbikes. We've won British Touring Cars. We've won the Ducati Championship. We've won in the TT. And we are going to be coming back to Formula One. But I think primarily, as the show's about boxing, we want to get ever more involved in boxing and use it as a platform, because I think it's an absolutely amazing sport. It's a sport that I think has, the people I met in boxing are almost without exception fantastic people. I think that, the irony is that I think there's a very small number of people who run the sport around the world. And you could probably name them, they're all household names. But yeah, I'd say I think it's a fantastic sport. I think UFC has probably, really shown them how it can be done in terms of marketing and as a platform. I've always been an advocate of terrestrial TV. When Ben fought Eubank, 18 million people from memory watched it on ITV. Frotch Groves, which was the biggest domestic fight in recent memory, or certainly was a groundbreaker when it came through, was I think 1 million or 900,000 pay-per-view buys. And if you think that's an 18th of the audience. So although that pay-per-view might have been £30 or whatever it is, and you can look at those numbers, the reality is that I think for boxing to flourish, it needs the oxygen of publicity and it needs to be free to air. And I think pay-per-view boxing is brilliant for the promoters. It's arguably very, very good for the fighters short term. But in terms of being a household name, in terms of advertising, in terms of sponsorship, in terms of partnerships, I think it's suffocated. And I think it would be great to see somebody come out and say, do you know what, we're going to put boxing on terrestrial, because I think that would make a huge difference. Now, to be fair, Mick Hennessy did a brilliant job on Channel 5. One of the ironies, we did a couple of fights. I worked with Mick, and he's a brilliant guy. But I worked with Golovkin, and we put Golovkin Murray on Channel 5. I think from memory that was February 15, and that got more viewers than Frotch Groves on pay-per-view.
Did it? Wow.
And yet the media didn't want to talk about that. And I think, Barry McGuigan then got the Channel 5 gig, and Carl Frampton, etc. But ultimately, I think boxing needs to be on terrestrial. That boxers are fantastic sports people. I think that the discipline, the dedication, the making weight, I think people underestimate that. People have naturally got bigger. To make 12 stone at super middleweight, these guys are naturally 14, 15 stone guys coming down. I think that weight making, the dedication required for that, I think is underestimated. They deserve to be household names. I think Audley Harrison was probably devastating for boxing because the BBC gave him a massive long deal, and he was unfortunately a bit of a farce. But as I say, I just think boxing is very disjointed. I think there's several promoters all going in different directions, and I think UFC have almost given them a blueprint on how you can do things. The difference is that UFC, all the people are employees. They're effectively paid staff, rather like a real life WWE. Whereas boxing, they're all self-employed. I think the other thing with boxing that makes it a challenge, to be fair to the promoters, is a lot of fighters don't want certain fights. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, and 90s, you know, it was brilliant, wasn't it? People like Holyfield would literally fight anybody, you know, in the blue
I did
ribbon
that the other
division.
day, you know, Will. I said this, I did a side by side, which I think was 1993, top 10 heavyweights versus the top 10 heavyweights of now. And it was breathtaking. It was insane. Like these were worldies in every single ranking. I think the worst one was Tim Witherspoon. And I'm saying the worst, Tim is a good friend of mine. He's still two-time heavyweight world champion. Do you know what I mean? And I'm saying worst because there's Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, you know, and these are nothing like the fighters of today. I really wanted to speak to you about something, Will, without jumping in. First of all, congratulations on the link up with Assassin Boxing Promotions and Management and being named up in Aberdeen, the Rich Energy Arena, which is brilliant. And it's a beautiful venue. I had the honor of commentating there on behalf of Assassin just the other day. Talk to us about that. What are you hoping to achieve with that let's say that partnership?
Well, I think, I mean, going back slightly, I've been working in boxing on and off for 12 years. Worked with Frank Buglioni, Nick Blackwell, who became British middleweight champion. Fantastic performance, knocked out John Ryder, which was, you know, in light of Ryder's subsequent career, you know, fantastic achievement. Then I, you know, did a partnership with Golovkin, which was fantastic. And he obviously, when I was working with him initially, he was on HBO After Dark. And the last fight we did with him was Canelo in Vegas, which was, I think, circa $30 million. And Golovkin, I think, you know, at his prime was phenomenal, and nobody wanted to go near him. Froch was offered $10 million, and at the time hadn't earned half of that money and didn't want to go within a million miles of Golovkin, despite what he subsequently said. So that was very eye-opening to see it at the very highest levels. And I've subsequently put in bids for some big world heavyweight title fights. And then the last one, which was White Fury, we came a distant third. And I think in the end, Warren put in a phenomenal bid and did brilliantly promoting that. And that was superb. But I've always loved boxing. So for me, it's two-pronged. One, it's a privilege to work in the sport because I think it is fantastic. And I think the people involved in it are generally really high-quality people. And two, as a platform for the drink, I think is very good, you know, in terms of content, in terms of getting it out there. And I've got to know a lot of people in boxing over the last 12, 15 years. And I got to know Rio very well, who set up BIBA, the British and Irish Boxing Authority, and that has been interesting. He's a brilliant guy, and I met various other people, and I think Lee McAllister is a real character. Assassin Boxing. I went to university in Scotland, so I've got a lot of Scottish links anyway. And he's been 6-time world champion. He's fought all sorts of different people. He's as bold as they come. He's a real live wire. I think he's got a lot of tenacity. He's been doing fights in Africa. He's been putting together different events. You know, he's got this now, as you say, new arena, which has been named the Rich Energy Arena in Aberdeen. So there was a lot of synergy. I really admired his attitude. He's got fantastic positivity. He's very well connected. And I just felt instinctively he was a really good guy. So we've been developing our partnership, and I just think Assassin Boxing is a brilliant business. And I just think that as a platform, it offers Rich Energy a lot of opportunities. And I think he's the right sort of guy that I would like alongside me as we start to go to take on, to start to bid for big world heavyweight title fights, and for Rich Energy to become a serious force in boxing, working with Lee and Assassin Boxing.
I love it. I want to talk about something that's happening with you, Will, with Eddie Earn. So for some reason, and I'd like you to explain why. So I don't like saying the word beef because it sounds childish and pathetic, but it kind of is. So there's some kind of issue where he keeps throwing you, or the Hearns, or their association keeps throwing you out of events. Why is this? I mean, only recently in Dublin, I believe, with Jay McFarlane, it's happened again. So can you just educate us around why is Matchroom doing this?
Well, I mean, obviously that's a question for them, isn't it? But I can only tell you that I was thrown out of the dressing room in Triple G v Kell Brook in 2016. I thought that was all sorted, by the way, to be honest, because When I did the deal for Lucas Brown to fight David Allen, they were as good as gold, so there was no problem there. But yeah, a few weeks ago, turn up in Dublin, fantastic venue. Huge night of boxing, by the way. I thought that was superb. Some great fights. The co-manager, Jay McFarlane, who was fighting Carty. Big opportunity for Jay. And obviously worked with Sam Kynock on that. Turned up before the fight and, wasn't allowed in the dressing room. And clearly, you sort of say, well, hang on a minute, I'm the manager. There's the duty of the fighter. He has to have his manager in the dressing room. Fundamentally, that's a basic right within boxing. And they escorted me from the premises. So you'd have to ask them why that was, but it's not the first time it's happened. And, I just think it's just very, very unprofessional, to say the least. And it's pathetic, really. I mean, as I say, you'd have to ask them why it was. What I would say is that Froch Groves 2, I had a deal on ITV.
Right.
And that would have then been seen by 16, 17 million people, which is, obviously 15, or let's call it conservatively 12 million more people than would have seen it on Sky. It seemed that they weren't happy about that. So, I mean, listen, there's always competition in every business and every sport, but clearly they don't like the cut of my jib. But I think to go to the extent of banning me from the dressing rooms with a fighter that I manage years after that, I mean, it's not what I do, that's for sure.
Very strange. Very, very strange. You said a little bit earlier on about asking for business. We reach around 30 million people a month. So if Rich Energy ever want to sponsor anybody, give me a shout.
I'd love to. And I'm sure we can have a good chat and you can be fueled by the world's premium energy drink, Rich Energy.
Absolutely love it. Will, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll definitely speak again. I want to hear more about this. And I'm going to find out really what's going on. I'm going to make some calls and find out what's going on with this whole chucking Will out. I don't like that because you seem like a top guy. Will, thank you so much, mate, for coming on the show.
Thanks very much.